Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Replacement Killers, starring Chow Yun-fat, Mira Sorvino, Michael Rooker, Carlos Gomez, Jurgen Prochnow, forgive me if I said that wrong, and Danny Trejo, directed by Antoine Fuqua. Now, before I get into this movie, talk about this director. I have reviewed him a couple of times with the first two Equalizer films, as well as the Olympus Has Fallen. And I caught up with the Olympus Has Fallen series since, but I'm going to catch up with the Equalizer series after I'm done with his, before I get to Equalizer 3. But yeah, this is his directorial debuts, and I'm doing his filmography leading up to the Equalizer 3. And that's a series I've already done, but I'm going to just go back to it just to be safe. So let's get into this movie. In a club, we follow assassin John Lee, played by Chow Yun Fat, killing someone for reasons I don't quite fully understand. Then we move on to a speeding boat with Detective Stan Zito Zedkov, played by Michael Rooker, going after Pete Way and shooting him dead. So now Peter's father, Terrence, played by Kenneth Singh, forgive me if I said that wrong, wants Zito dead after killing Peter and attending his funeral, as Zito says he made his choice. And is this the world's greatest acting? Not by a long shot, as it feels very 1990s. For example, the way it's shot it versus how the story is told. And I don't mind the shots from the 1990s, and as it works well for this kind of movie, as it feels 1990s. John gets an assignment with Terrence to assassinate Zito, or actually his kid, rather, as this is his last assassination for Terrence until he's free to visit his mother and sister back in China. And he prepares for the job and almost shoots Zito's son like a sniper would, but he doesn't, and that's leading to a predictable plot of the movie that this director has no choice but to habitize that. John asks a Chinese priest to hide his mother and sister in a safe place in Shanghai because he didn't do the job successfully. And I'm entertained by this movie, but it's also pretentious. John calls his friend Eddie to get a passport, and he leads him to Meg Coburn, played by Mira Sorvino, and he goes to her office to get a passport while she almost shoots him, with a hidden gun under her desk. And she makes him a passport until Terrence's men comes and busting up the place, and John killing some of them motherfuckers dead. And this is one of those mindless action movies that don't give a shitload of make a shitload of sense. And am I going with it? Kind of. While Meg gets caught by the cops and is interrogated by Zito, and the acting is a tad bit painful. While Mira Sorvino is not a great actress, but by any means, and Chow Yun-fat isn't better in this either. But Michael Rooker keeps this movie together because he ends up as one of James Gunn's favorite actors to work with eventually, as he's in the Guardians of the Galaxy series as well as the Suicide Squad. While these characters are just not that interesting, unfortunately. John takes Meg with him and sees Eddie is dead, and Terrence's men comes in and almost killing them until they have another mindless action scene and they get away by car. And this movie is full of mindless action scenes, and it gets to the point it's ridiculous. Terrence hires Riker, played by Till Schweiger, and Collins, played by Danny Trejo, to go after John while Meg pulls a gun at John, but doesn't because John stops her and she asks what the hell is going on. And John goes on about his family and how Terrence made John assassinate people but couldn't kill Zito's son. And is this making any sense? Honestly, no, it isn't. But Meg helps him out while he takes her as hostage, and she has to go on to an arcade place to get John's picture while she's being flirted with, and as they're successful and at getting their pictures taken. Riker and Collins are called in thanks to the tattooed face person that flirted with Meg earlier, Loco, as he ended up calling them in. And this was the point when I had to turn off my brain as a mindless action movie, as this is. Meanwhile, Riker and Collins shoots and kills an innocent woman and a couple of cops, but the cops I get, but the innocent woman did not deserve it, as that was a little stupid to me. Terrence hears Zito making a plan with his son, or made a plan with his son to take him to the movies, and as that sets up a scene that will be kind of dumb, while John and Meg see the dead priest and tells John to get Zito and his kid at first, as their next location is at the movie theater. And do I care at this point? Not by a long shot, but it's okay at best. Meg finishes John's passport while they grab Loco and they steal his car to get to the cinema, as they drive like a bat out of hell of to the movie theater and get to the movie theater, while Riker and Collins almost get the kid until Meg tells Zito and his son to get down and have a shootout at the movie theater, in which today's day would not happen, no thanks to the Colorado incident when The Dark Knight Rises came out, with someone dressed up like the Joker. But this scene is absolutely unrealistic nowadays. Zito learns Terrence was the reason all of this has ever happened in the first place. And Zito gets to the final showdown between John and Terrence, while John is bleeding and heals himself with dirt, which is hilarious and ridiculous at the same time. Terrence goes in a limousine with his butler, and they bump into John and have the final shootout. And John shoots at Terrence and the butler, but they get out of it alive. And Meg comes in busting up the place while with a truck. And Collins shoots the truck down, but doesn't kill Meg, as she gets out of the. And the butler goes after her, and Meg hides from the butler and switches sides with him. Meg shoots him dead was a funny and a corny way, and John shoots Collins dead, and John bumps into Terrence and reloads quicker than Terrence does, and John shoots Terrence dead as he falls to his death. And Zito comes to the scene, and Zito has a Mexican standoff between John and Meg, and Zito lets them go without their guns, and John is on the way to China, and Meg gives him his passport and takes off, and he and Meg say their goodbyes. And I was into this climax, as silly as this movie was in my opinion, but at the end of the day, it's alright. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this movie a 5.5 out of 10. These characters are not that interesting, while the plot is not original, nor does it make sense for damn sure, but I'll give this director this one time to tell this plot. But it keeps me entertained for close to 90 minutes, so I went along with it as I was entertained. Mira Sorvino is not a great actress by any means, and Chow Yun-fat is no better than she is, but the only actor holding this movie together, in my opinion, is Michael Rooker, as he works in his way to working with James Gunn eventually. It makes him better and more recognizable, as he is the best thing about the movie, in my opinion. The action is mindless to the point it gets ridiculous after a while, but the movie, in my opinion, is fine, as it's mildly enjoyable. But I might give this a mild recommendation, as it's just alright by the end of the day. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with more Antoine Fuqua, as well as Spider-Man, Transformers, and Indiana Jones coming up. And so stick around for the next couple days, and until then, it's time to shoot some bastards.